This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And as is tradition, it is Sunday, which means I am in a random location recording this episode. Today, I am actually at work. So I work for a local news station. I do nighttime weekend editing, which means I work 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. on the weekends. And it is not the best shift, but I mean, it's not hard. It's not a hard job, but here I am in the newsroom right now. So basically how it works, since I don't really have that much content to talk about, basically how it works is that, it's just me from 1 a.m. to like 4:30. It's just me and the nighttime producer. And then after that, all the studio people come in, but they go straight to the studio. And then the show starts at 5. And then after that, I'm the only person in the newsroom. Everybody is either in the control room or in the studio. So, and I have my own little like editing room. The door is closed. Nobody can hear me. I don't know how the acoustics are in here. It's probably not the best. We do have a voiceover booth that I might go to there next week, but right now I am recording this at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I am as chipper as ever. So let's get into it. Today's show, I feel like we have a decent show today. Once again, it's very NFL heavy because that's all that's going on in sports world, as we are in day 11 without sports. I think. I'm not who's keeping count. I mean, really. So today we're going to be talking about the Saints adding Emmanuel Sanders. We'll talk about Todd Gurley, the Todd Gurley situation, getting cut from the Rams and signing with the Atlanta Falcons. Then we'll talk about the best remaining NFL free agents out there. And then topic 5, we'll go into the MLB, and we'll talk about the Red Sox investigation, where the punishment might come up to light, or the findings of that investigation will come up to light soon, I think. And then our last topic, our random sport of the day, is going to be Bandy. I'm not going to give you any more information than that. It is just Bandy. So let's talk about it. So the QB free agency market, which I hyped up a lot when we were talking about the lead up to the new league year here, I was hyping up a lot. That was before sports were gone forever. So I was hyping up a lot. I was wondering, like, where are all these big names going to go? Well, most of the big names have left. So Tom Brady's in Tampa, Teddy Bridgewater's in Carolina, Phillip Rivers is in Indianapolis. And then you still have big names like Cam Newton. You still have Cam Newton, and then Andy Dalton as well. So what is going on here? How does this all affect the draft, the NFL draft? There's four or five quarterbacks that are probably capable to at least start for a team in the NFL draft this year. So what does this mean for those guys in the NFL draft? Now, who are the teams that are the most likely to draft a new quarterback? Who are the teams that are just kind of might draft a backup and just to be under the current quarterback? We're going to get into it. So first, we're going to start with the high chance of drafting a quarterback in the first round, which of course is the Cincinnati Bengals. They're the number 1 pick, more than likely going after Joe Burrow. Bengals haven't cut ties with veteran Andy Dalton yet, but they are looking for trades or an outright release. Those seem imminent, especially with them having the number 1 pick and Joe Burrow being available, and they would be the laughing stock in the whole league if they do not pick up Joe Burrow at the number 1 spot. Whether you agree or disagree with Joe Burrow's ability, you can't deny he's kind of earned that number 1 spot at least this year. So they're projected QB 2 deep going into August. Joe Burrow will be the number 1 quarterback, and then the number 2 quarterback could be Ryan Finley, which is a name that I've heard before. I think he played for NC State. He was highly touted quarterback in college, but he didn't. He was pinned as the most NFL ready quarterback in college, and now here he is as the backup quarterback, just throwing some shade out there for no reason. Number 5, or the 5th pick in the draft, the Miami Dolphins. They've been active in free agency, but their quarterback situation is kind of the same with Ryan Fitzpatrick, Josh Rosen, both under contract. Most people around the league believe the Dolphins could get a quarterback in this class and use their immense draft capital to trade back and gain more picks in next year's draft, targeting a quarterback maybe like Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. But the franchise has been doing plenty of work on this class. Some around the league believe they will draft Oregon's Justin Herbert, while others believe they will roll the dice on Alabama's Tua Tagovailoa. I used to say that name perfectly fine, and now I cannot, and I don't know what happened there. I don't know what happened to my tongue. So, I mean, they might have to trade up, maybe. This is a situation that will keep us guessing until draft night. So maybe they could have 3 quarterbacks on the roster. If they don't cut Josh Rosen, if they do pick up a new quarterback, they could either cut Josh Rosen, and that will be a very sad ending probably to Josh Rosen's career, because nothing really happened. You played for a very bad Cardinals team with a head coach that no one in the organization trusted because they fired him after 1 year. And then you went to the Dolphins, who were a very bad Dolphins team, and I mean, he just had a lot of bad luck there. But the projected 3 deep would be Ryan Fitzpatrick, then Justin Herbert, which Fitzpatrick is probably his job to lose at that point, and Justin Herbert's to gain. And then you have Josh Rosen at number 3. The LA Chargers are next. They have the number 6 pick in the draft, and they are the biggest question mark, in my opinion, in this whole thing, because the Bengals, they're getting Joe Burrow. The Miami Dolphins, you don't really know what they're doing, but they can live with rolling out with Ryan Fitzmagic for 1 more year. They can live with that. But the Chargers, they are the wild card here. So the Chargers, they lost out on Tom Brady, which I thought Tom Brady was going to go to the Chargers. But they'll most likely focus to the NFL draft. And they have Tyrod Taylor as a stopgap answer. Tua became a wild card of the draft, of course, with his injury history and his health being in question. That is even more true now with the process being done remotely. April 9th, if he has a throwing session for April 9th, if that still happens, then it will be done in private with the tape then distributed to NFL teams. Medical rechecks will need to be done. Team received thorough medical report at the combine, and Tua's doctor will examine him in April and share his findings with all 32 teams. But he could go to the Chargers. He could drop to the Chargers because the Chargers have no chance of getting Joe Burrow. They have no chance of getting Justin Herbert, in my opinion. So you have Tyrod Taylor. You have Tua under Tyrod Taylor over there in LA. So that would be a very interesting one. Then we're going to move on to teams with medium chance of drafting a quarterback in the first round. The Las Vegas Raiders is the most interesting one. They picked up Marcus Mariota. I didn't report on that because there's a lot of other things going on. But they picked up Marcus Mariota. And they still have Derek Carr, but there have been rumors going around for the longest time that Derek Carr might not be the future, might not have a future in Las Vegas, so they could easily draft another quarterback. They have 2 solid but unspectacular quarterbacks in their depth chart, in Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota. They could ride out that experience throughout 2020, and if it doesn't work out, then guess what? You have Trevor Lawrence and Hurts, not Hurts. You have Trevor Lawrence on the other side if you tank that badly. But Jalen Hurts could be an option for the Las Vegas Raiders, and then they would have a 3 deep of Derek Carr, Marcus Mariota, and Jalen Hurts, which is a very interesting 3 deep. It's not bad by any means, but it's amazingly mediocre. Which, by the way, last episode we mentioned that I was looking through all the stats. Derek Carr leading most of these statistics in the passing category. So he is still a viable option. It's just kind of nobody. I mean, the Raiders don't want him. Then, of course, you have the New England Patriots. They could draft someone. They could add someone. They could get Jacoby Brissett from the Colts. They could roll with Jared Stidham. They're an interesting one. And then the Colts, who have Phillip Rivers, they need another guy. I guess Phillip Rivers is 38, so you're going to need another guy. But there you have it. That is the current possible draft choices over there in the NFL for the quarterback position. When we come back, we'll discuss Emmanuel Sanders signing with the New Orleans Saints.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
As if the NFC South didn't already have a huge shakeup in free agency, now we're just adding on to it. We're just piling it on. So, if you did not know, the massive curveball in free agency, the New Orleans Saints signed a huge free agent. They had a huge free agent signing in Emmanuel Sanders. They worked the phones late Friday night to nab Emmanuel Sanders, the wide receiver fans have clamored for since he was rumored to be on the trading block during the 2019 season. They didn't get him the first time around when the Broncos traded Sanders and a 5th-round pick to the 49ers in exchange for a 3rd and 4th-round pick. But they have him now. By 9:30 on Friday, a deal had been reached, according to ESPN. It's a 2-year deal worth up to $19 million, which doesn't appear to be a bad price compared to the 3-year, $33 million deal he signed with the Broncos in 2016. This deal has capped off a fairly busy week for the Saints. It began with re-signing Drew Brees, a reunion with safety Malcolm Jenkins, and reaching a deal with guard Andrus Peat, that guarantees Andrew Peat $33 million over 5 years. Outside of signing Brees, reaching a deal with Sanders is quite possibly the biggest move the Saints will make all offseason. He'll be the perfect complement to Michael Thomas, one of the best receivers in the league, and a huge boost for a team that's been desperate to find a number 2 wide receiver. It also frees the Saints to consider other options in a draft class that's loaded with wide receivers. The Saints do not have to worry about wide receivers at this moment in time. This draft is plentiful with these wide receivers. I mean, you got guys who lit up college football like T. Higgins all the way down, like projected late 1st round, stuff like that. You got Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs. And then, of course, CeeDee Lamb. So this receiver class in this draft is immense. They could probably wait until like the 2nd or 3rd round and still get a solid receiver, just to get a solid young receiver into their system to work under Emmanuel Sanders, work under Michael Thomas. So Emmanuel Sanders, he is 33. He's shown he still has plenty left in the tank, which receivers usually last much longer than any other position in the sport, as evident. Jerry Rice played until his early 40s, and then Larry Fitzgerald right now, he's in late 30s right now, and he's still balling out big time. So he finished with 869 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns in 2019. He had 7 catches, 157 receiving yards, and a touchdown against the Saints while with the 49ers last year. The Saints don't usually spend a ton of money on wide receivers, especially not those outside of their building. Considering that and the potential salary cap maneuvers they'll have to do to make it all work, adding Sanders is one more example of the Saints going all in for what could be Drew Brees last season, which that's another thing people don't really realize. This could easily be Drew Brees last season in New Orleans. It could easily. I mean, there's nothing left to really prove for Drew Brees, honestly. I mean, he's won a Super Bowl. He would love to win a second one, I bet. But at this point in time, there's nothing to prove for Drew Brees. He owns all of the NFL records, which, of course, Tom Brady is kind of right behind him there. I've seen a lot of funny things saying that Drew Brees is just playing just because Tom Brady keeps playing, because he doesn't want Tom Brady to take over any of his records. But they could be going all in for his final season. It will be certainly a fun one to watch with Michael Thomas, like we said, Emmanuel Sanders over there as well. Alvin Kamara is still with the Saints, of course, and the Saints, whoever they could draft to make that offense even better. I don't really know who the Saints could get right now, but the Saints already have a very prolific offense at this point, and then you're adding a pretty good receiver in Emmanuel Sanders. This is going to be an interesting year for the Saints. I mean, Drew Brees is going to throw for like 5,000 yards, and no one would blame him. And Alvin Kamara, he probably doesn't care that much because he's probably going to get a lot of receiving yards because they throw to the back a lot, and Kamara is a very good receiving back for the Saints. Now, this will be fun to watch. It will be a prolific offense. But what about this freaking NFC South division? Holy cow. This division is insane. You have the Atlanta Falcons, who just got Todd Gurley, which we'll talk about in the next segment. You have Tampa Bay, of course, getting Tom Brady, and everyone's hyped up about him playing with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin over there. Then you have the Panthers. I mean, the Panthers signed Teddy Bridgewater, and they still have a pretty good receiving core, and they got Christian McCaffrey. Their offensive line, meh. Defense, But that new Matt Rule could overhaul the entire system and put the Panthers at least competitive. So the NFC South all of a sudden, which this happens every other year, by the way, I feel like it happens it's like a 3-year cycle. You have 1 year where every team is competitive. You have 1 year where there's one dominant team, but the rest of the team's not terrible. It's just you have one really dominant team. And then you have 1 year where every team sucks. It's a 3 to 4 year cycle over there in the NFC South, where, I mean, before, like 4 years ago, before 2016, I believe, every year in that division, a different team won the division. Every single year. So, yeah, and then the Panthers won like three in a row, and now the Saints won last year, and they could win again this upcoming year, especially with this addition of Emmanuel Sanders. So this is the first significant free agent signing of a receiver. That market has been quite cool, probably because this draft class is loaded with talented receivers, like I mentioned before. It will be interesting to see a full breakdown of Sanders' deal, but if his annual salary is around $8 million a year, that's a bargain. This is a perfect fit for the Saints. Perfect fit, perfect player, perfect fit for the Saints, perfect fit for Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, this is probably one of the best offseason acquisitions you're going to see in the NFL. I mean, this is an A-plus signing. It doesn't really fill a need for the Saints. It doesn't really fill a need because you already had Michael Thomas, but it builds on to this insane offense that is already led by one of the best quarterbacks of all time. So, When Sanders signed with the Broncos in 2014, he said he was like coming to quarterback heaven. The years after Peyton Manning retired were decidedly less so, when he caught passes from Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch, and Case Keenum, before spending the second half of 2019 in San Francisco with a very receiver-friendly offense. But you had Jimmy Garoppolo throwing interceptions with his eyes closed. So it only makes sense that Sanders picks the Saints with a Hall of Fame-bound quarterback and a team in need of a number 2 receiver alongside Michael Thomas. Sanders has thrived as part of a receiver duo. Of course, he was with Demaryius Thomas in Denver, and they both had huge success in Denver. So that's kind of actually how I would describe this. This is going to be like Peyton Manning playing for Denver before, age got to him. That's kind of what this is going to be like, because you're going to have Emmanuel Sanders as number 2. You're going to have Michael Thomas as number 1. It's going to be like him and Demaryius Thomas again. Now, Michael Thomas is a very different receiver than Demaryius Thomas was, but they are. It's kind of the same situation where you have a prolific offense with a Hall of Fame quarterback, future Hall of Fame quarterback. Defense, on the other hand, Saints defense has kind of been back and forth, especially last year. We'll see what they can add on to it. It could be a very defensive-heavy draft, especially if they think they can stick with that other guy at quarterback. I'm blanking on his name right now because I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm making sure I don't have to do anything for work. So I'm very scatterbrained at the moment. But it could be a very defensive-heavy draft for the New Orleans Saints, and we will see how that works out. I mean, I think it improved this offense a lot. Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Troyquan Smith, Deontay Harris, Lil Jordan Humphrey, which is still a real name. You got options at receiver, and then, of course, you have Kamara, who's one of the best running backs in the league. When we come back, we'll talk about a former great running back in the league before injuries and other things happened. We'll be talking about Todd Gurley, the situation from him going from the Rams to the Falcons when we come back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So there was something that happened during free agency during this past week that I kind of expected to happen, but I was still surprised by it. And of course, I'm talking about the Todd Gurley situation with the Rams and him going to the Falcons. Now, the Falcons is a little less obvious to me, but him leaving the Rams, or the Rams leaving him, was kind of obvious. You kind of saw it a little bit last year, especially when he started getting that arthritis in his knees and his production was way down. But they did have some falling out there. There was a dramatic swing, of course. Gurley went from the NFL Offensive Player of the Year in 2017 to $57 million contract in 2018 to an afterthought in 2019, and now he's gone from the Rams. The Rams on Thursday cut Todd Gurley, ending a 5-season run that included extraordinary highs and lows. The Rams will move forward, likely with the 2019 third-round draft pick Darrell Henderson, given a chance to take the lead role at running back. Malcolm Brown, Gurley's understudy since 2015, also will factor in. An addition likely will come through the draft. But at the moment, that seems like minutia. Let's lose sight of the big picture. What in the world happened here? So Todd Gurley is gone. Not long ago, he wore an LA hat in a national TV ad campaign and pretended to take a bite out of a digitized burger. He had the look, the flash, he could hurdle defenders, and he was perfect for the LA market. What went wrong here? The clear pivot point is December 16th, 2018, the day the Rams played the Philadelphia Eagles, and something happened to Gurley's left knee. Gurley played 19 more games with the Rams and topped 100 rushing yards only once since this game with the Philadelphia Eagles. So nothing was really provided, no explanation. It's going to be a complicated situation, of course, but there was no explanation about what happened here, why his production went way down. Was it an injury issue or whatever? It's a complicated situation, and it likely goes beyond Gurley's bulky knee and suggests a deeper disconnect between Gurley and the Los Angeles Rams. The teams needed a clear, smooth path forward when it comes to revitalizing his run game in 2020, and the road with Gurley was increasingly dotted with potholes. Too much uncertainty and too many mixed messages. The Rams had a problem, and the only thing worse than a problem is doubling down on that problem. And they didn't do that, of course. I mean, they're paying Todd Gurley this immense amount of money, and his production went way down. It's kind of obvious why. They kind of cut ties. There were just too many questions. That's the big thing with Todd Gurley. There were so many questions. How healthy was his knee? Is there a degenerative condition like arthritis? Is he capable of carrying the ball 18 to 20 times in every game for a full season if needed? Was he happy with the team? That's an interesting one. Nobody thinks about that one. All these questions were repeatedly asked over a 16-month period, and no answers were ever obtained. This situation couldn't continue in 2020. What happened in 2019 didn't work. On or off the field, a change needed to happen for the Los Angeles Rams to improve and to be better. Because after 2018, after that Super Bowl run where they lost in the Super Bowl to the New England Patriots, last year they were not the same. That offense was not the same. Now you could blame Jared Goff. You can blame the coach. The coaches getting found out, but Todd Gurley was a big part of that. Todd Gurley's run game was a big part of 2018 and 2017. So Todd Gurley, his run game is a big part of that. The Rams were motivated to make a move Thursday. Gurley would have receive a $10 million bonus if he stayed on the roster after 1 p.m. specific time. It's going to take a while to sort out the full salary cap ramifications. But the Rams have designated Gurley for a post-June 1st release, which means they can spread out some of the salary cap liability over the next 2 seasons and recoup some cap space now. The Rams also saved $5 million when they also cut linebacker Clay Matthews, which what a fall from grace Clay Matthews is. But they were open to trading Gurley, but not surprisingly, given his contract and uncertainty with his knee, they could not generate a market. Nobody really wanted to take on that contract. Not especially with those risks. So the Rams did what they felt they needed to do, even knowing that they would take a salary cap hit and expose themselves to public ridicule, which honestly, there hasn't really been that much public ridicule. Everybody kind of understood. I mean, Twitter kind of clowned them a little bit, but mostly I felt like Twitter was clowning the Houston Texans because the Texans traded for a running back who's past his prime and traded away DeAndre Hopkins, and everybody was making fun of them because they could have just kept DeAndre Hopkins and waited a couple more days and picked up Todd Gurley, which would have been probably the same production as David Johnson. But that's all I saw on Twitter. All I saw on Twitter was people making fun of the Houston Texans and Bill O'Brien instead of making fun of the Los Angeles Rams. But what was the other option at that point? If the Rams were going to keep Gurley, they needed a reasonable path forward. Last season, the Rams needed to either recommit to Gurley or trade him. Sitting on their roster was a running back who appeared diminished in 2019, even during his most productive games. Who is just starting a bloated 4-year, $57 million contract extension, and who, at least based on public appearances, didn't seem bothered by much of it. So this is tough to quantify, of course, but let's examine the past month. After an objectively bad statistical season from Gurley, assign the blame in any direction, it doesn't matter. Coach Sean McVay said at the Combine that he wanted to sit down with Gurley and talk about everything, and more importantly, listen to what Todd Gurley had to say, which is a interesting concept. I know, it's crazy. Listening to people and listening to what they have to say is an interesting concept, especially in this day of social distancing. So that was a thing. Gurley made a paid appearance at an esports event. He's never rude. Anyone who watched one of his interviews knows he's not exactly verbose. His weekly media sessions often were brief, light on details, and heavy on sarcasm. And he seemingly didn't really want to be there, and nobody hold that against him most of the time. So at this esports events, he could not be more affable. He talked about gaming, joked about the days of dial-up internet, spoke at length about his off-season plans, and then proposed new collective bargaining agreement. Then he was asked about Sean McVay's comments about a meeting with him. He laughed at this question. He laughed at this question, and he said, I'm more of a guy where if there ain't nothing to talk about, then there ain't nothing to talk about. But if we've got something to talk about, then we can talk. That's kind of my perspective. Coach got my number. Coach got my number. So this is kind of implying two separate things. It's implying that either Sean McVay was not telling the truth and they didn't actually talk to Todd Gurley, or that Todd Gurley just doesn't want to talk. Nothing to discuss. Nothing about his usage in 2019. Nothing about his injuries, his knee, the approach to offensive line, anything that the Rams were going through. I guess there was nothing to talk about. So Gurley had already been informed that his days with the Rams were numbered when he was asked that question. But it intrigued everyone. So Gurley said, I don't really have time to think about a lot of stuff or just sit down and think about the season, but I'm always visualizing and thinking about the next step. Gurley said he'd been excited about the XFL, which was fine. He's friends with Nelson Spruce, who played for the Wildcats, the LA Wildcats. He's being supportive. But that's all he had about football, apparently. He didn't want to talk about the Rams. He didn't want to talk about anything. Something happened here. I'm not really sure what happened. But at the end of the day, he signed with the Atlanta Falcons, making that NFC South division very, very interesting. If Todd Gurley can get to even half of the production that he was, this could be a very interesting division, of course. But we never know. We, of course, will never know. This is a low-risk decision for the Falcons. If Gurley can't perform or fails his physical, they lose very little. Gurley's salary is only $5 million. Adam Schefter reported as $6 million from the Falcons and $7.5 million from the Rams, less $2.5 million offset. Either way, it's not a lot. We also don't know what of the Falcons' portion is guaranteed. While there are many fans who view Gurley as damaged goods and aren't seeing things through Bulldogs' colored eyeglasses, which, of course, there's a lot of Georgia Bulldogs fans in Atlanta, in Georgia in general. There's a lot of Georgia Bulldogs fans who remember Todd Gurley, and they are jumping for joy. So the Falcons, the fans are happy about this decision, whether or not it's a good decision or not. It's very low risk, so it doesn't really matter that much. But Todd Gurley is now an Atlanta Falcon. We'll see how he does there. He's probably going to be the number 2 guy there, but we'll see how that goes. When we return, we're going to talk about the best remaining NFL free agents on the market.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
So, like I mentioned, the NFL free agency just keep going. It doesn't want to slow down. It doesn't want to, spread it out a little bit. And we don't want to, wait and just kind of chill out a little bit. And, spread it out, spread it even for the rest of the 2 months or so that we're gonna going to be without sports. We don't want to do that or anything. But no. The NFL, they don't stop. It never stops. But who's left? Who are the best remaining NFL free agents on the market? Remember that top 100 list I pulled off from The Athletic that I did last week before, stuff hit the fan. But that list from last week, we are going to be looking at it again, and we're going to be looking at the remaining people who has not been signed. So the numbers I'm going to mention, that is the number next to them on the top 100, just showing you how kind of important that they are, I guess. I mean, to give you just kind of a reference of how big of a free agent they are and why or why not they have been signed. So let's start this out. Number 5 from the top 100 list, Jadeveon Clowney, defensive end. He played for the Seahawks. He battled through core muscle injury last season, put up modest numbers, 3 sacks, 13 QB hits, 7 tackles for loss. Clowney is not a prototypical edge rusher. He's at his best when he can line up in different spots, cut loose, and create chaos, like we saw him do during the Seahawks Week 10 win over the 49ers. He could sign again with the Seahawks. It doesn't seem like he's going to get as big of a contract as he would like, but them's the breaks over there in the NFL, in the National Football League. Number 10, Jameis Winston, quarterback. He hits free agency at a terrible time. On one hand, Winston's only 26. He threw for over 5,000 yards and 33 touchdowns last season. On the other hand, he threw 30 interceptions in a league that he also had 12 fumbles, which is the sixth most. How many teams are going to be willing to pay more than $25 million per year for such a mistake-prone quarterback? It only takes one, though. His market will be fascinating to monitor, of course. As we mentioned, you have the Chargers that could bite on him. The Patriots, that would be an interesting one. That would be a fun storyline, the Patriots picking him up. And then you have the Raiders, of course. It could go to the Dolphins, stay in Florida, but next up, number 13, Robbie Anderson. He's not a top-tier vertical threat, but for teams hoping to fill their need for speed in free agency, Anderson could present the best option. He's averaged 14.8 yards per reception over the last 4 seasons, which ranks 27th among players with at least 100 targets. Anderson's 50 catches of 20-plus yards during that stretch ranked 19th. He's an outside receiver who can stack defensive backs and also make contested catches. Last year, Tyrell Williams offered a somewhat similar profile and landed a 4-year, $44 million deal. That would be a good comparison for Robbie Anderson, and that would be a good contract for him, of course. Number 25, Everson Griffin. He's an edge for the Vikings. In addition to the list, Griffin opted out of the remaining years of his deal last month. His best days are behind him, but Griffin can still be an effective pass rusher. He finished last season with 8 sacks, 24 QB hits. Number 30, Jermaine Ifedi, right tackle, Seahawks. He is 26 years old. He's the 2016 first-round pick. He started 60 games in 4 seasons with the Seahawks, but Seattle declined to pick up his 5th-year option. Penalties, he had 12, have been an issue, but Ifedi is a starting caliber right tackle. His best fit would be a run-first offense. The Juwan James deal with the Broncos last season, which was 4 years, $51 million, would be a good comparison for Ifedi. So he could potentially go to a run-heavy team. Nothing's coming to my mind right now. I don't know why I stopped talking. But anyway, the Cowboys maybe. I don't know. The Cowboys need another running back. Logan Ryan, number 33. Logan Ryan, cornerback, 29 years old. He's smart, instinctive, hybrid defensive back who's coming off a career year. Ryan played different roles in the Titans defense as a slot corner, safety, savvy blitzer. His 18 passes defended were 3rd most in the league. Ryan also added 4.5 sacks, 8 QB hits, 113 tackles, and 4 interceptions. He's not a fit for teams looking for an every down outside corner and can struggle against speedy vertical threats. But Ryan can be an effective playmaker in the right role and may be able to transition to safety down the road. Number 34, Brashad Perryman, wide receiver, Buccaneers. He's 27 years old. Former Ravens first-round pick signed a 1-year, $4 million deal with Tampa last offseason. Will now get to hit the market again. He caught 36 balls for 645 yards and 6 touchdowns last season. Among players with at least 50 targets, Perriman ranked 6th in yards per reception with 17.9. He saw a bump in playing time down the stretch after Mike Evans got injured. From weeks 13 to 17, Perriman's 506 receiving yards were third most in the NFL. He is a legit I can't say words right now. He is a legit vertical threat. Reminder, it is 5:40 in the morning. I've been up all night. Just reminder. Just cut me some slack. He is a legit vertical threat, shows impressive body control, and can make contested catches. If Perriman could stay healthy, he could prove to be a nice find for a team looking to add speed. Number 38, Von Bell, safety, Saints. He is 25 years old. He started 45 games in 4 seasons with the Saints. Bell's strength is playing in the box. He's best suited for a scheme that has a defined free and strong safeties, or one that uses a lot of too deep safety looks. Wild card, he wasn't originally on the top 100 list, but Clay Matthews comes in. He's an edge. He played for the Rams. He was 34. He wasn't on the original list because he was still on the Rams roster. He wasn't officially a free agent, but they cut him. They released him, and he's free to find a new team. His best days are behind him, though. He still had 8 sacks and 11 quarterback hits last season. He could be an option for a team looking for a short-term edge help. So there you go. No, 41, Prince Amukamara, cornerback, played for the Bears, 31 years old. Bears released him to clear cap space, but he was a 15-game starter last season. He's starting caliber outside corner who can help a team looking to fill a short-term need. 43, Xavier Rhodes, cornerback, Vikings, 30 years old. The Vikings released the 3-time Pro Bowler after the start of free agency. Rhodes' play slipped in a big way last season. And it's telling that Minnesota, a team that needs a cornerback, is letting him go. Still, Josh Norman recently got a new deal from the Bills. Some team will gamble that Rhodes can rebound and provide a year or two of competent play. 47, Ndamukong Suh, 33 years old, defensive tackle, played for the Buccaneers. He signed a 1-year deal, $14 million deal with the Rams in 2018. Last year, he signed a 1-year, $9 million deal with Tampa. Now he hit free agency for the 3rd straight season. I'm sure he's not a big fan of that. He's not the player he used to be, but he has remarkably durable, having started 158 out of the possible 160 games during his 10-year career. He had 2.5 sacks last year, 14 QB hits last season. Number 50, Devontae Freeman, running back, Falcons, 28. Another example of the risk of paying running backs big money. The Falcons released Freeman Monday to free up cap space, and then they went out and picked up Todd Gurley on the cheap. So he returned from injury last season, had a 1,000-yard season from scrimmage, but averaged just 3.6 yards per carry. My voice. My throat's getting a little dry. I need some water. We're gonna try to truck through to the end of the segment, and I'm gonna get some water. But number 51, Bashaud Breeland, quarterback, Chiefs. He's been on 3 teams in 3 seasons. He was a 15-game starter on the outside for the Chiefs last year. Could benefit from their Super Bowl run. There's always a market for competent corners. 53, Shelby Harris, defensive tackle, Broncos, 29. Became a full-time starter last season. Performed well, producing a career-high 6 sacks. Harris showed an amazing knack for getting his hands up at the right time. Led the NFL with 9 passes batted at the line of scrimmage. Number 54, Marcus Golden, edge for the Giants, 29 years old, and this will be the last one we'll cover. He had 12.5 sacks in 2016, but battled through injuries the next 2 years. Last offseason, Golden signed a 1-year, $3.75 million deal with the Giants. Had a sack or QB hit on 8.3% of his pass rush opportunities. Ranked 18th out of 172 players. Golden does a good job on stunts and plays with great effort. He should have a better market this time around. So, that is nowhere near the end of the list. There is so many more players that are still available here on this list. I might cover that on Tuesday if they have not been signed yet. But When we come back, we'll be talking about the Boston Red Sox as they are under investigation for the same thing that the Astros were under investigation for. We have not heard the findings of that report yet. We'll discuss that when we come back.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
So unfortunately, baseball season has been postponed for the time being because of the coronavirus. But that does not mean that the MLB investigation is not closed on the Boston Red Sox. Now, let me lay this out for you if you've been listening to the show for the past couple months. Obviously, you know that Houston Astros are in trouble. If you pay attention to sports at all, you know the Houston Astros they're kind of in trouble right now. They are. Their general manager and their manager got fired. They got fined $5 million, which is like the most the MLB can fine you, based on their bylaws. And then now they're getting ridiculed by every fan base imaginable. It was going to be a very interesting season, but since the season's postponed, we don't know when it's coming back, so unfortunately. But the Boston Red Sox, they had their former manager who got fired because of this whole situation. Their former manager was the hitting coach for the Houston Astros during the 2017 season when they went and won the World Series, and they cheated using this system. He went on to get hired by the Boston Red Sox in 2018, went on to win the World Series in 2018. So, obviously, it's a little suspicious there. Alex Cora, of course, I'm talking about Alex Cora. So he went on to the Red Sox. They won the World Series, and now they are getting investigated. So what happened was a lawyer for the Red Sox on Friday morning suggested that MLB had already made a conclusion on whether the team in 2018 violated baseball's ban on in-game use of electronics. The attorney declined to admit that the Red Sox illicitly stole signs using electronics. We do not admit that, Lauren Moskowitz of Kravitz, Swain, and Moore told the judge, and when he asked her, do you admit or not that the Red Sox violated the rules? The interaction occurred during a 1 hour, 47-minute oral argument on whether lawsuits brought by Daily Fantasy Sports contestants over the sign-stealing scandal should be dismissed. The Red Sox, along with the Houston Astros and MLB, are defendants. The arguments were made telephonically because coronavirus. Everybody say it now. That's interesting, Judge Jed Rakoff replied. So you think the commissioner of baseball was just off base in your view? That's what the judge said. MLB has yet to issue the report or prospective discipline against the Red Sox after sources told The Athletic that the team used this video replay room illegally during its 2018 championship campaign. Nevertheless, Moskowitz replied, Your Honor, I think that there are distinctions between what the Red Sox believe occurred and what the commissioner found. And I think that certainly they're entitled to disagree that activity happened at the club level. Certainly we did find on certain occasions in 2017 that this electronic device was used to communicate sign information. So he's mentioning 2017, which that's before Alex Cora got there. So that kind of muddies the situation even more, because once again, that kind of throws out the whole Astros thing. It kind of holds true to the accusations that Carlos Beltran brought the system over, and when he said that other teams, like the Astros, were way behind on their sign stealing techniques, that brings more validity to that claim that Carlos Beltran said that, and then he helped bring all that on. MLB in January punished the Astros, of course, for electronically stealing signs, and a report on the Red Sox is expected to come. The team fired Alex Cora, did so citing the transgressions MLB found Cora to be involved with while he was with the Astros bench coach in 2017. The defendants in the case all have argued that they do not owe the DFS, which is the fantasy sports whatever, players a duty to produce a cheating-free game, which kind of makes no sense because it's supposed to be a cheating-free game just in general, but whatever. The idea that all baseball teams or all sports teams are making an implicit representation about compliance with the quote-unquote rules, that is a difficult standard to hold all sports to, Moskowitz said, which makes... What? He basically just said that every team is not obligated to not cheat, which, okay... Rakoff struggled with that, though, asking if bettors would have been entitled to compensation in the 1919 Black Sox scandal. Lawyer John Hardiman replied, "When you get involved with sports, you know some things go wrong, you can't predict things, and one of those things is, unfortunately, rules violations. If there had been some representation made to you by baseball or by somebody, listen, this game isn't bribed today. Maybe there's some sort of claim." Rakoff then asked, is there an implicit representation that by baseball, especially since 1919, that the games are honest, played by the rules, and so forth? Hardiman then replied, having rules and the enforcement that happens certainly indicates that baseball is trying to do that. However, in terms of that being translated into some sort of legal obligation to fans who are disappointed when the enforcement of rules is not done as quickly as they want or as effectively as they want, no, I don't think there's any legal claim to that. David Golub, the lawyer for the DFS contestants, said at the end of the hearing, this concept that you can run a tournament and that the material information upon which the tournament is based is without disclosure to the participants, corrupted or compromised, or whatever word you want to use to render those statistics meaningless. The concept is that's not actionable, is not correct. While Rakoff, who made clear that he is a baseball fan, pressured the MLB side, he also equally, if not more so, questioned the DFS side, asking if they had the standing to sue and whether they expressly relied on MLB's and the team's statements they abided by the rules. Which of your clients relied on a specific statement, the judge asked. Golub replied, every plaintiff replied on the sports representations that it followed the rules. Rakoff promised a decision on whether to dismiss the cases by April 15th. There are also a handful of cases brought by season ticket holders in Texas State Court, and one brought by former MLB pitcher Mike Bolsinger in California State Court. They're not as far along as the DFS litigation, which is the first sign-stealing related lawsuit to get before a judge. So, let's kind of recap this for a little bit. Basically, the lawyer for the Boston Red Sox basically said that they are not obligated to follow the rules when it comes to the DFS, to fantasy sports, and the two daily fantasy sports, which is like DraftKings and all that. So they are not obligated to follow the rules for these people, which makes sense because they're not under those people. They are under the MLB. The MLB, of course, I mean, they are the ones that are supposed to be, controlling that stuff. But it's, so basically, he kind of, sort of admitted that the Red Sox cheated. Not really, though. I mean, that is a very big stretch. Just want to reply, make sure I get that clear. It's a very big stretch on my part to say that he admitted they cheated. It's kind of all lawyer speak, which I don't fully understand, to be honest. So, but it is an interesting article to read. The lawyer suggests that the team is aware of and disagrees with the MLB findings, which I think is the most damning thing, which means the MLB findings are harsh against the Red Sox, and the Red Sox are, of course, not big fans of that. So, will it be as severe as the Astros? Will it be more severe than the Astros? Because, of course, you don't want teams to continue doing this. And I think this Red Sox one happened after they already made the no electronic device rule, which I think was in place. They put in place the beginning of 2018, which kind of puts them more in fault than the Houston Astros were in 2017. So it's going to be very interesting how the MLB kind of passes that punishment on. Alex Cora already gone, so you can't get rid of him. You can get rid of the GM, I suppose. I wonder if they had the same deal with their players, where if the players talk, they wouldn't get in trouble. I wonder if they had that. But at some point, the MLB, the players are going to keep doing this because there's nothing, there's really no punishment for them if they keep doing it. So at some point, the players need to get punished. And I know the Player Association, the player union, they won't like that, of course, because they need to protect their own guys. But that might be something that needs to happen because players are going to keep doing it. Because at the end of the day, if your GM and manager get fired and the team that pays you millions gets only fined $5 million, which is probably less than you get paid, why should the players care? So I think eventually players need to be punished, whether that be taking away rings or banning them from baseball or suspending them. Not banning, they shouldn't be banned from baseball, but they should be suspended at least half a season or something like that. But we'll see when these findings officially come out. When we return, we'll be talking about the random sport of the day, which is Bandy.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and One Championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
You might have been thinking this entire show, what the hell is Bandy? Well, I mean, that doesn't even sound like a sport. Well, it is a sport. And it's been around for a long, long time. It's been around since 1813. So let me explain this in simple terms before I delve into the Wikipedia article that I pulled up with the history and stuff like that, which we will discuss. Bandy is basically soccer and hockey had a baby. So basically it's hockey, except it's a much bigger rink. It's like a soccer field size rink, patch of ice, and they play hockey basically. So here is the official. They also use a ball instead of a puck. Here's the official Wikipedia article to kind of get a little bit more on track here. Bandy is a team winter sport played on ice, in which skaters use sticks to direct a ball into the opposing team's goal. Simple enough, right? Sport's considered a form of hockey, and has a common background with ice hockey and field hockey. Bandy has been influenced by the rules of association football. Both games are normally played in halves of 45 minutes. There are 11 players on each team, and the fields in both games are about the same size. Bandy is played like ice hockey on ice, but players use bowed sticks and a small ball, as in field hockey. A variant of Bandy, rink bandy, is played with the same rules, but on a field the size of an ice hockey rink, with ice hockey goal cages and with 6 players on each team, or 5 in the USA Rink Bandy League. Traditional 11-side bandy and rink bandy are recognized as International Olympic Committee. They're recognized by the International Olympic Committee. More informal varieties also exist, like 7-side bandy with normal size, goal-sized cages, but without corner strokes. Those rules were applied to the Davis Cup in 2016. Rink bandy has in turn led to the creation of the sport rink ball. Bandy is also the predecessor of floorball, which was invented when people started playing with plastic bandy-shaped sticks and lightweight balls when running on the floors of indoor gym halls, which I have actually played. Floorball is a lot of fun. Just letting you know. Just quick throwing that out there. I played it in high school. Had a lot of fun. Our gym teacher kind of put different rules onto it, but she called it hockey. It was not just called floorball, but It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with it. But based on the number of participating athletes, bandy is the world's second most participated winter sport after ice hockey. Bandy is also ranked as the number 2 winter sport in terms of tickets sold per day of competitions at the Sports World Championships. However, compared to the 7 Winter Olympic sports, bandy's popularity compared to that of the other winter sports across the globe is considered by the International Olympic Committee to represent a gap between popularity and participation and global audiences. This is held to constitute a roadblock to future Olympic inclusion, unfortunately. So let's delve into the background and the history of bandy. So bandy is the earliest origin of the sport. The earliest origin of the sport is debated, though many Russians see their old countrymen as the creators of the sport, reflected by the unofficial title of bandy. Russian hockey is another unofficial title. Russia, England, and Holland each had sports or pastimes which can be seen as forerunners for the present sport. English bandy developed as a winter sport in the fens of East Anglia. I couldn't tell you where that was, but whatever. So large expanses of ice would form and flood meadows and shallow washes of cold winters, and skating was a tradition, of course. Members of the Bury Fen Bandy Club published rules of the game in 1882 and introduced it to other countries. The first international match took place in 1891 between Bury Fen and then I can't say that. It's a Netherlands club. But after a couple of club fusions, now named HC something, the same year the National Bandy Association was started in England. The match, later dubbed the original bandy match, was actually held in 1875 at the Crystal Palace in London. However, at the same time, the game was called hockey on the ice, probably as it was considered an ice variant of field hockey. So the first National Bandy League was started in Sweden in 1902. Bandy was played at the Nordic Games in Stockholm and Christiania, present-day Oslo, in 1901, 1903, and 1905 between Swedish, Finnish, and Russian teams, and similar games in Helsinki in 1907. A European championship was held in 1913 with 8 countries participating. In modern times, Russia has held a top position in the bandy bandy area, both as a founding nation of the International Federation in 1955 and fielding the most successful team in the World Championships when counting previous Soviet Union team and Russia together. The highest altitude where bandy has been played is the capital of Tajik, autonomous province of Gorno-Badakistan. Anyways, historical relationship between the association, football, and ice hockey. As a precursor to ice hockey, bandy has influenced its development and history, mainly in Europe and former Soviet countries. While modern ice hockey was created in Canada, a game more similar to bandy was played initially, after British soldiers introduced the game in the late 19th century, at the same time as modern ice hockey rules were formalized in British North America, present-day Canada. Bandy rules were formulated in Europe. A cross between English and Russian bandy rules eventually developed, with the football-inspired English rules dominant, together with the Russian low border along most of the 2 sidelines, and this is the basis of present sport since the 1950s. Before Canadians introduced ice hockey into Europe in the early 20th century, hockey was just another name for bandy, and still in parts of Russia and Kazakhstan. With football and bandy being dominant sports in parts of Europe, it was common for sports clubs to have bandy and football sections, with athletes playing both sports at different times of the year. Some examples are English Nottingham Forest Football and Bandy Club, today known as just Nottingham Forest FC, and Norwegian, not going to try that name, some Norwegian team, with the latter still having an active bandy section. In Sweden, most football clubs which were active during the first half of the 20th century also play bandy. Later, as the season for each sport increased in time, it was not as easy for players to engage in both sports. So some clubs came to concentrate on one or the other. Many old clubs still have both sports on their program. Both bandy and ice hockey were played in Europe during the 20th century, especially in Sweden, Finland, and Norway. ice hockey became more popular than bandy in most of Europe, mostly because it had become an Olympic sport, while bandy had not. Athletes in Europe who had played bandy switched to ice hockey in the 1920s to compete in the Olympics, and smaller ice fields needed for ice hockey also made its rinks easier to maintain, especially in countries with short winters. On the other hand, ice hockey was not played in the Soviet Union until the 50s when the USSR wanted to compete internationally. Typical European style of ice hockey with flowing, less physical play represents a heritage of bandy. So let's go over the rules of bandy real quick. The official rules, I suppose. So there are 18 rules in official play, designed to apply to all levels of bandy, although certain modifications for groups such as juniors, veterans, and women are permitted. So each team consists of a maximum of 11 players on each side, one of whom must be the goalkeeper. A team of fewer than 8 players may not start a game. Goalkeepers are the only players allowed to play the ball in their hands or arms, which is interesting. There are a variety of positions in which the outfield, non-goalkeeper, players are strategically placed by a coach. These positions are not defined or required by the rules of the game. Position formations of the players in bandy are virtually the same as the common association football positions, and the same terms are used for the different positions and players. A team usually consists of defenders, midfielders, and forwards. So some other rules. So they have a standard match consists of 2 periods and 45 minutes each, known as halves. It's usually a 15-minute halftime. Referee's official timekeeper for the match and may make an allowance for time. So it's basically like soccer. The rules are literally soccer, except on ice. And that's pretty much, I don't think you can hit. I don't think there's any contact or any big hits like in hockey. I definitely don't think there's any fights allowed. But there you have it. That's bandy. I hope you enjoyed learning about a new sport that you probably never heard of before. I'm going to keep doing this until I run out of sports to talk about, and then I'll go on to something else. So thank you for listening, everybody. If you like this podcast, please like, rate, and subscribe to it on wherever you listen to your podcast. You can follow me at Strickland_Josh on Twitter, and I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday, and I'll talk to you guys on Tuesday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.